Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you guys are having a good day. It's been a while, hasn't it? Yes, sure has been a while since we've been back here at the Minecraft Survival Guide Museum, and the tree exhibit is not looking much changed. Life has been a little bit busy for me lately, but I'm back to the grind now, and I have a little bit of stuff to do around here, primarily the continuing decoration of the tree exhibit here at the museum. I do also want to do a little bit of work to rotate this large tree somehow so that we can get a tree that's growing out towards the inside of the room, because this tree unfortunately overlaps with where I want to put the perimeter wall. The main thing though is to get this looking a little bit more like this room over here, which has walls and a roof and lighting and is pretty good for what I want the vibe of the museum to be. I think we're going to do the same thing in here, and obviously by contrast with this room here, which is all about grass and dirt, but mostly just has brown materials in it, so I made the walls green. This room over here, when you come in, has a lot of brown material, but a lot of leaves, and I don't want to just make a green background, because then the leaves start to blend in with the upper portion of the wall if we do exactly the same thing. So what I've chosen to do instead is bring a variety of stone over, and we're going to do a similar kind of gradiated pattern, starting with light materials at the bottom and working up towards dark materials at the top, starting, I think, with some smooth stone, because that's obviously a really light stone texture. After that, I think we might layer in some andesite, because that's got a nice kind of gradient between the smooth stone, the andesite, and then some stone that we can layer on top of that. You see what's happening here? There are lighter textures at the bottom, and it's slowly gradiating up towards darker textures at the top. To get any darker in the stone family after that, we have to move into things like stone bricks, and the cracked stone bricks here are a better example of that. Now, you're obviously looking at highlights in the brick there, but you're also looking at the cracks, and the cracks start to add in a much darker grey, which I think from a distance especially starts to look much darker in comparison to the materials around it. So the idea here is that we're going to be layering up these four materials, maybe even a little bit of cobblestone mixed in with the stone and cracked stone brick towards the very top of the ceiling, and then we can complete a surround, add on a roof, and maybe even I'm trying to work on a design for a dome in the center. Domes are pretty hard to do in Minecraft because they require a lot of curves, a lot of calculations, a lot of trial and error if you're building them freehand, and I don't really have an ideal tool to build those. Plots.co.uk has a few circle generators and sphere generators and stuff like that, so maybe I'll look into including one of those. But I think it'd be really nice to let a lot of light in from the ceiling. A lot of people have suggested that we should add skylights into this exhibit to make it look like the trees have enough light to grow naturally, so that seems like a fairly sensible thing to do. But to start off with, we're going to do the walls, and we're going to do that in the form of a time-lapse. But before we start the time-lapse, and yes, you thought the time-lapse was going to start right there, no, we have other stuff to discuss, namely the main subject of today's episode. I've been thinking a lot since the Nether update arrived about how we are going to farm wither skeletons now, because there are a couple of changes to the way wither skeletons work, or rather the way that the biomes around the wither skeletons work, that actually allow for some more efficient wither skeleton farming. This right here is my original wither skeleton farm, and as you can see, not super active, primarily because I never really took down the rest of the fortress or spawn-proofed any more of this. I just wanted this as an early wither skeleton farm so that we could take care of our early game needs. As you can see, yep, wither skeletons spawning outside of the farm more often than not, and we could run down here, despawn them, and respawn them hopefully within this area, but realistically, it was a lot of effort, and it meant slabbing all of this or spawn-proofing it to some extent, which was also a lot of effort, not to mention spawn-proofing the rest of the area from zombie pigmen and now piglins as well. So I don't really want to use this wither skeleton farm any more than I've had to already, and my other wither skeleton farm out in the distance has run into a couple of problems. Namely, the fact that the area around it is so built up with terrain that even though I've created such a giant area around the outside of here, we have barely made this farm any more efficient. We don't see wither skeletons spawning inside of here all that regularly, and that would require me to take down a lot more of the terrain in the surrounding radius. You saw the radius of the Hoglin farm I was making a few episodes ago, and this is basically the same sort of radius. We're talking 128 blocks in each direction. Not diameter, radius, meaning basically across the middle of this, centered on there, we would have a 256 block wide circle. And that is, once again, a lot of work, and there are some things we can do now that the Nether update has arrived to make wither skeleton farming even easier without having to go to the trouble of spawn proofing such a large area. The problem with that is we need to find the right biome for it, and so I'm going to be spending a little bit of time while the time lapse is playing looking for the right location. And that is going to require me to look for a soul sand valley out here in the further reaches of the Nether where 1.16 terrain has generated. I have some ender chests on me, so don't worry too much about the fireworks. We'll get a few more in a second, and I need to track down one of these Nether fortresses that is completely surrounded by a soul sand valley. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and you guys can enjoy a time lapse of me building up the latest room of the museum. Hey folks, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the time lapse. We have found a Nether Fortress in a soul sand valley, and to my great surprise, it is actually not even that far from the center of my world. It's really not too far out. We are at 1300, 1500 on the negative axes for both. And as you can see, a lot of spawns here. There's a lot of blazes. I can even see a bunch of wither skeletons, a few piglins here and there, a few zombie pigmen that have just spawned inside the boundary of the fortress and just wandered out, I would presume, because the special thing about Soul Sand valleys that makes them so perfect for these Nether Fortress farms is that the only things which will spawn in Soul Sand valleys are ghasts and skeletons, and they will spawn in a limited quantity. The mob cap for mobs spawning in a Soul Sand valley is actually reduced from the amount of mobs that can spawn in the rest of the world, and that actually means that spawns inside a Nether Fortress can continue regardless of whether or not a mob cap for the Soul Sand Valley has been reached, because there are just few enough ghasts and skeletons in the world that they actually cause a total mob cap that reduces the likelihood of mobs spawning in the fortress. So, if you want to set up with a skeleton farm in the 1.16 update, a fortress in a Soul Sand Valley is the best place to do it. Now, I'm actually going to run down here, or fly down here rather, try and take care of the majority of these hostiles that have already spawned in this area, which is going to be a challenge in itself, but standing in this crossroads here, which is actually a perfectly positioned crossroads for what I have in mind, I want to run a couple of quick commands. Just look at the amount of wither skeletons that are around here, though. That is truly phenomenal, and I really think we're going to be getting a lot out of this fortress once we can convert it into a wither skeleton farm. It means spawn-proofing the rest of the fortress to avoid this happening, but then once we've done that, we will end up with a really, really efficient farm. Now, I'm actually going to run a couple of commands here just to prove a point, because anecdotally, I can tell right now that we are a good distance away from most other biomes in the Nether. However, there is a basalt delta behind me, which I'll be able to take a look at. There you go. You can kind of see the spires of it in the distance. The basalt delta back there may actually start spawning magma cubes if we are close enough to it, and magma cubes, as I'm sure you're aware, will spawn in huge numbers in a basalt delta and might actually end up taking up the mob cap. I'm just trying to get all of these blazes out of the way. There we go. And hopefully I'll be able to run a couple of quick commands. We're going to be using the locate biome command because it has a couple of really useful things about it. First of all, let's do a locate biome on a crimson forest. There we go. 408 blocks away. That's very good. Let's do a quick locate biome on a basalt delta, which is the one that I know is closest. 136 blocks away. Okay, so we are not currently in the spawning radius that we will activate the basalt delta spawning and get magma cubes. That is good. Next up, I guess we should probably also check for a warped forest in the area, like so. Okay, that's great. And of course, the one that is everywhere else in the Nether is Nether Wastes. Wonderful. Okay, and now I'm getting attacked by blazes again, so I need to have my wits about me. But it looks like standing at the center of this crossroads here, we are at least 136 blocks away from any biomes other than Soul Sand Valley, which is probably why we're getting such fantastic spawn rates around here. So naturally, I've just used a couple of commands to check the spawnable space here just for my own purposes, but if you're in a world where you don't have access to commands or you don't want to use them, then you can always just fly around, check distances from your nearest crossroads, or if you're lucky and have a pretty expansive Soul Sand biome like this one, you may be able to find an AFK spot that will leave you close enough to the center of the farm, but far enough away from any other biomes that you don't need to worry about that at all. But as it is, it looks like this crossroads section here is also a spot that we can AFK to activate the farm, which works out very, very well for me. Now we know where this is, though, I can take a screenshot of the coordinates and make my exit. I'm not going to be spending any more time over here at this project today, simply because I've not got the time for it in this video. We will have to do a lot to that fortress to convert it into a super efficient wither skeleton farm, but convert it we will, my friends. And in the meantime, I'm going to head back to the museum so I can recap some of the changes I made to the museum in the time-lapse. Oh boy, it feels good to be back in the overworld after flying around the Nether for so long. That genuinely did take me about an hour to find it, even though the fortress itself was pretty close to the world. And now we return to this. I'm actually really happy with the design of this exterior part of the museum, and people may be wondering why so much of the rest of it on the outside has been left unfinished and why this room is twice the height of the room next door? Well, of course, that's mainly to accommodate the fact that we have a jungle tree in here, and the jungle tree is pretty massive. It's probably one of the largest size of jungle trees that we could grow. And I could, of course... Oh, there's some creepers in there and a burning zombie, all right? I'll leave that alone for the moment. But yeah, we could end up regrowing the jungle tree until we got a slightly smaller specimen. Of course, I haven't lit it up in here, have I? Yeah, probably why there are creepers spawning in the middle of the day. This kind of needed to be a tall room to make sure that the roof wasn't skimming the top of the jungle tree. I really wanted the dome to feel high up. Not only that, but we could potentially even squeeze in a kind of balcony area up here where people could walk around slightly closer to the dome and kind of see the light pouring in from the ceiling and look down on the tree exhibit from above. While I'm here, by the way, I may as well come in and spam a few torches just to make sure that we don't end up with this feeling like an actual roofed forest and having a bunch of creepers and stuff spawning in here during the day. There we go, we'll take you out, take out the skeleton. I think I saw a zombie over there as well. And hopefully the other creepers have despawned already, but there we go, we can pop a few torches in and not have to worry about that too much. We'll definitely come up with a more permanent solution for lighting as we put the rest of the roof on. But if you look at the museum from the outside, and we know that this here is going to be the front wall with the main entrance, I figured this part of the roof structure could be put in now because I'm fairly certain we're not going to be building any higher than that onto that section of the museum. Meanwhile, of course, we have a corridor section that's going to be running along here, so I didn't really feel like we needed to put a roof and an outside wall on that quite yet until I figured out exactly what's going on with the rest of the perimeter walls. This is definitely not what the outside of the rest of the build is going to look like, especially not since we put so much effort and time into designing a really nice set of windows for the front wall. Instead, this is probably going to be papered over, kind of wallpapered over with another set of blocks as we design this corridor that I've left some space for here. The corridor is also probably going to have an entrance somewhere further down the wall where you can walk into the tree exhibit from the corridor, as though you can just kind of take shortcuts to the specific exhibits you want to look at instead of wandering through all of them. We can't do that with the dirt exhibit simply because this wall here is already occupied with the glass cases that have the displays in, but I like walking into this place now. It really feels a little bit more complete, and the gradient of the wall is really nice. It's funny how much you notice how dark stone is compared to andesite when you're using it in such large quantities like this. It really starts to form that darker gradient that I quite enjoy, and while I'm not super keen on how the smooth stone block tiles, I think it works out pretty well. And I haven't put roof structures on the other three sides of this room because at this point, I don't really know where exactly some of the other rooms in the museum are going to be going. What I do know is that on top of the dirt exhibit here, I actually want to have a second story to the museum where you can actually walk in and see some other exhibits, probably coming through the wall here from this exhibit into another room beyond. And we'll have some sort of floor over this to make sure that we're not just walking on the roof of the room below. It's definitely going to have its own floor material and so forth, but the idea is to have a room layered on top of the room below, which probably means this layer up here is going to have a balcony of sorts that takes you out into the tree exhibit, once again so you can look at these trees from a bit of a different height, maybe even get up to those windows that I've left in the upper reaches there, and I'll probably put some more windows here and there when I know when the outside walls are going to be going in and exactly what they are going to be overlooking. But I also want to put a balcony of sorts in the dirt and grass exhibit that's going to lead through to the next room. And by the way, this is my kind of pixel art facsimile of a 5x5 grass block just to show which room you're going into. I might rejig that a little bit off camera just to make it look a little bit nicer, but in here I think what I want to do is have a balcony section that goes around the room almost like a catwalk and exits the room over there and over there, leading you back into the main entrance hall where we're going to have this dragon skeleton surrounded by a bunch of other stuff in the main entrance. So what I'm thinking we're going to do is get some nice dark wood material. I'm not sure if we're going to use spruce or dark oak for this, but it's probably going to be made out of slabs. I was thinking about doing this using scaffolding for that kind of catwalk feel, but I really don't feel like the scaffolding worked out all that well. Off camera, I've been gathering a few more nautilus shells from the drowned farm up there in the sky, still only enough to get me 9 conduits so far. Nautilus shells are a little bit difficult to come by. Not all of the drowned are going to spawn with them or drop them, so it's a little bit slow going, but I've been and repairing my tools up there when I can, and I think we might end up using some polished black stone walls as well. So let me see if I have a few of those hanging around. And up here around the outside of the room, we're going to lay down this bottom half slab walkway. We'll probably come up in the corner here just to make sure that we don't end up laying it over that grass block and having it revert back into dirt. And I enderpearled up here, so of course there is an endermite. Sooner or later I'm going to have to capture one of these and name tag it for the museum, but for now we're just going to lay this corner out like so, have it come in like that, and we'll probably have to put some sort of light source here in the corner. Maybe that can be where a conduit goes, or maybe we can just lay in the rest of the decorations here as I have imagined them. We're going to open up this section of the wall here, taking out this green concrete and terracotta, and I think we're going to decorate the exterior of this door in sandstone just to kind of frame it nicely. I think that'll be a good choice. It's going to come around here and exit basically in the center of this opposite wall. You know what? We're going to come up another slab in the corner here just to give it a little bit of extra height. There we go. And I think roughly about here, I think that is going to be the exit to this room. Yeah, I guess it lines up with the lanterns in the ceiling. So we'll make another, maybe a smaller door here, maybe a 3x3, maybe expand it if it makes sense to expand it to the same size as the one over there. Do we like the spruce, or should I go with dark oak? I think we'll stick with spruce for now. We can always change it later. And around the outside here, we're going to have this 2-block high glass partition, which is only functionally going to be 1.5 blocks high for people walking around here, but that does mean you can't jump over it or fall on through it. And opposite the center of the doorway here, we're going to have the first of our little walls, and these are going to be dividers. They'll, of course, connect to the glass panes now, meaning that maybe we'll pop something on top of here, and that is where the conduit is going to go, and that's going to provide a really neat little light source. I'm surprised that that doesn't activate the wall below it, but I guess it doesn't technically connect. What it does do is provide a little bit of light. That block light from there is actually going to illuminate this area a little bit, which isn't necessary since this is all slabs, but it's going to be nice to have that area of the room illuminated. We could maybe swap those out for lanterns if we don't like the fact that it's not actually sitting on the wall, but I want to do something a little bit special with this path, have it be like a kind of conduit path around here, because it is ultimately a conduit around the rest of the museum. I'm using clear glass for now, of course, but I think light grey might also be an option. Kind of gives the impression that it's frosted glass and you can't quite see stuff as clearly as you could through the clear glass, but it doesn't have that bright white border, so that might be another design consideration. And of course we can route everybody into the next room just by sectioning this bit off here, and then they can walk through into what is going to be the plants exhibit in the next room. Let's pop down a couple more of these conduits and let's take a look at how this looks from the ground. Yeah, I like that actually. It kind of gives a feature to these walls which were otherwise kind of blank, and just means that the room has a little bit more height to it, a little bit more interest further up in there, and makes you wonder what else that you can explore in the museum if you follow this conduit path. That's looking pretty good. And underneath each of the wall sections, I kind of want to brace it with some spruce trapdoors just to make it look like it is kind of attached to the wall a little bit there and supported by some sort of structure. Let's see how that looks. And does it mean that we've got like little pillar sections of the walls there? I think it might. There we go. That's looking pretty cool. We'll end a pearl up over, and yeah, it does kind of start to connect it upwards towards the conduit, which I prefer actually than just having the flat wall in this case. Still pretty cool that we have the option though. We could always flip the trapdoors open and closed if we wanted to change those, but nothing wrong with that so far. And then around the outside here, yeah, we're going to create a sandstone surround, of course making sure that this wall here is going to be solid so that the glass can connect to it. But from there, I think we'll make another pillar on the opposite side. We'll maybe put some stairs in for a little bit of detail. Throw in a little bit of cut sandstone for some extra detail. Cut sandstone is the one that you still just make in a 2x2 instead of smelting it like smooth sandstone is. We've done another 3x3 door over there instead of the 5x5 design we have here. Maybe need to tidy up that transition between those blocks, but I think that's looking pretty nice. I actually really like that. And I think maybe we can continue the sandstone theme into other rooms, or maybe it'll transition in style depending on what the rooms are. But I think that's a pretty good start to a little bit of an elevated walkway around the rest of the museum. And who knows where we can take it from here. That's the fun of a bigger project like this. But folks, I think that's where we're going to wrap it up for today. A little more work to do on that Nether Fortress, of course, but we're going to save that for another episode. For now, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Minecraft Survival Guide. My name has been Pixlriffs. Don't forget to leave a like on this episode if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye for now.